Greetings and salutations, friends, and welcome back to more Warhammer 40k lore. Orks. There are a lot of them, and they have a society. Yeah, of sorts, anyways. Primarily based on several major clans, with defining attributes which should, in theory, allow them to operate together with other clans, and have their attributes complement one another, to form, in theory at least, a highly homogeneous yet also diverse in skill and attribute society that functions automatically, without any real need for higher leadership or management skills. Perfect for a unruly species like the Orks. And yet we've only ever actually talked about one of these clans, and so today we're going to talk about another. The Bad Moons, the wealthiest of all the Ork clans. Which immediately raises a few interesting questions, like, the Orks know what an economy is? Or, actually, we should start a bit earlier than that. The Orks know what math is? Sort of. They understand that a lot is more than a little. What constitutes a lot and what constitutes little varies on circumstances, allowing them to have a remarkably effective system of inflation control and price governance, oddly enough. We can see this in the fact that Bad Moons remain just as effective traders, although that too is a loaded term for a species that's barely figured out bartering yet. Regardless of prevailing local circumstances. It could be a backwater orc planet with a tiny greenskin population, where the most valuable and precious resource is freshly dilated squirrel anuses. And even in this capitalistically bereft place, the Bad Moons would find some way to set up a shop, selling wooden sticks in various sizes and pricing them appropriately for the economic prowess of the local populace. Similarly, on major orc worlds where millions of angry, violent greenskins are living from one fistfight to the other, the Bad Moons will invariably set up enormous business empires, replete with personal armies and hordes of slaves and servants to see to the needs of the hungry consumer masses, always in search of a heavier boxing glove. Though, again, in reality, terms such as shops and businesses, etc., don't really quite fit what we're talking about here. Again, the Ork economic system is, basic, and usually formed around the size of the local populace, as here's the thing. The only reason why the Orks even have an economy at all, considering their limited mental faculties, is the fact that every single last solitary greenskin inherently and automatically recognize the same solitary currency and its value in the market that they find themselves in. Teeth. You know, those little white things in your mouth. That's Ork money. Which sounds like a particularly idiotic idea until you start thinking about it. What you have here is an economic resource, a currency, that is being consistently added to the system regardless of loss. So even if teeth are destroyed, new teeth will grow out constantly. They don't require any particular mining or resources or technologies to be created, meaning that teeth are available to each and every single orc at all times, either via falling out of their mouths or being punched out of their mouths in aforementioned fisticuffs. Yet the teeth also grow slowly, and more or less at a consistent rate, with the notable exception of the Bad Moons, whose teeth grow faster than all the other clans, meaning that they are in turn a form of economic stimulus package to the system that will increase the quantity of teeth currency in circulation throughout the system, whilst also providing more mercantile services, which in turn allow a greater quantity of fiat currency to move through the system in a healthy cycle. And since the supply of fresh teeth is always going to be in proportion to the overall population, you are never going to over-mint the currency or under-mint it. The value of a tooth will simply change depending on the number of orcs that are available, and the value of goods available, like guns, ammunition, food, slave labor, etc., will also change in tact with this. As Bad Moons have an innate and mysterious power to immediately know the precise value, in the current market somehow, of any item placed before them. The only real problem with this system might be that if you have too many orcs and you're not taking enough teeth out of circulation, you could eventually end up with spiraling inflation. But seeing as orcs will continuously punch each other in the face, ruining teeth, taking teeth from each other, feeding it into the system and out of the system in turn, the orcs have a remarkable way of self-regulating their own internal economy. Even more so when you take into consideration that orcs never compete with any other economies. Ever. As every orc on a planet, no matter how many different tribes they might be divided in, all find that teeth are worth the exact same amount anywhere. And so when one market is absorbed into the other, usually accompanied with an overt display of extreme violence, the two markets simply merge and continue business as usual. Further facilitated by the orc species' remarkable ability to commit violent genocide upon one another in one instance, and then clasp hands in brotherly love and commit violent genocide upon the other group of orcs in the next instance. But don't think for even an instant that their role as traders make the Bad Moons any less orc-like than anybody else. Their primary interest when it comes to trade, of course, is not grains or little fluffy animals or fur coats. No, it's guns, choppers, heavy weapons, entire artillery pieces and tanks if they can get their hands on them. Not to mention the favourite weapon of all Bad Moons, the snaz gun. The snaz gun. A snazzy gun, in case the reference was too subtle for you. The snaz gun is, well, I don't actually know what a snaz gun is because the orcs don't know what a snaz gun is. It could be an actual good old-fashioned gun firing bullets, or shotgun shells, or miniaturized rockets, or plasma, or laser, or babies, for all the Bad Moons care. As the actual purpose of a snaz gun is not actually to kill the enemy. That is a secondary functionality. Its main purpose is to look awesome, whilst attempting to carry out its secondary purpose, which means loud noises, bright flashing lights, and as many random attachment onto the gun as possible, regardless of whether or not they actually serve a purpose. Though occasionally, often by sheer unmitigated accident, they do actually help in some way, shape or form. The Bad Moons aren't complete ignoramuses, and they will occasionally happen across something that is both expensive and worthwhile. Like some form of advanced barrel stabilizer that allows for a much higher rate of accurate fire, or some way to integrate the gun directly into the crude but functional bionics that the Bad Moon in question might have had hammered into his skull by a hopefully well-compensated doc. Now, of course, even if an orc has the actual capabilities, ability, and technical help to hit something, doesn't mean he will choose to do so, but it will make him a far more adequate marksman than your average greenskin, especially whilst wielding a weapon with fire rate in the quadruple digits, and a caliber well past, oh god please no. This passion for loud, boomy, rapid-firing firearms also means that the Bad Moons are a bit un-orky in their approach to warfare, in that they would much rather blow their enemy to smithereens in an overwhelming hail of high-explosive gunfire, rather than wade on into melee, chopper raised. That's the kind of work that can be reserved for lesser poorer orcs, and Gretchen slaves when none of the former are available. That's not to say, however, that the Bad Moons are in any way bad at close quarters fighting. They're still orcs, obviously, they're going to be fairly good at it, and due to their strong monetary abilities, they also tend to have much better gear than everyone else. Heavier armor, custom force fields, power weapons, ginormous snippy claws, anything and everything you can imagine an orc wanting, the Bad Moon have more of than everybody else, to the point where they start nailing spares onto random vehicles just because a pair of power claws sticking out of the hood for some reason just kind of looks awesome. And obviously, the Bad Moon's love for overwhelming flensing firepower also extends into their vehicles too. For whilst the infantry, like the Flash Gits with their snaz guns, can pump out a fair old bit of lead, far in excess of any average orc mob, a vehicle can of course carry a lot more weaponry again than even the sturdiest orc could ever hope to lug into the field, especially with any ambitions of firing all of them at once. That extra carry weight can also be used to lug around a great deal of absolutely worthless garbage. Or status symbols, as the orcs like to refer to them, with the average truck or battlewagon absolutely covered in totems, paraphernalia, icons, additional weapons, extra hardware, random pieces of brightly colored metal, and gold. Incidentally, did I mention that the Bad Moons are very fond of gold? Ridiculously fond of gold, even though gold has no actual observable value to them since it's not currency to orc kind. Well, yeah, they like gold. A lot. Not just yellow, gold, as in the metal gold. Again, I don't even know why, but they feel a strange instinctual attraction to that particular soft, decidedly un-orcish metal. But then again, that is far from the only un-orcish thing about the Bad Moons. Besides their combat tactics, which is shoot, don't stomp, weird enough in and of itself, they've got certain little quirks that makes them less than desirable in orcish society, because up until this point, you might think that surely Bad Moons are super duper popular everywhere. They bring incredible wealth to whatever warband they join. They bring loot, they bring vehicles, they bring ranged firepower, they bring teeth. Surely they must be welcomed with open arms from one side of the galaxy to the other. Not quite, because alongside great wealth also comes an incredibly poor and undesirable personality, which even orcs accustomed to habitual blind violence find, frankly, quite disgusting. Starting with the seemingly inherent Bad Moons assumption that anything and everything that they can see is also something that they can, and therefore should, own. If that means paying for it with enormous wads of flashy cash, then so be it. If it means breaking into that person's house later at night or paying someone to do so, well, either way, it's theirs now. And those, of course, are the less confrontative ways in which something can be obtained in orc society, as simply shooting the orc in question and taking his stuff is also an entirely valid option, although it is likely to incur some sort of reaction. As most orcs tend to be linked together in some way, shape or form, shooting a random orc on the street is likely to get his mob on your ass, or his entire clan if you're a bit unlucky with his position in the hierarchy. Now this is of course nothing particularly rare for orcs, as civil war does not describe a particular unique state of being to greenskins, it simply describes yesterday, tomorrow, and every single day you have more than one orc on a planet. Though very few clans are quite as incendiary as the Bad Moons. Partially because, yes, they will try to take your stuff one way or another, partially because of the extraordinarily haughty way in which they try to take it. Imagine somebody slapping you in the face with a wad of cash and asking for your trousers, and you've got a roughly generalistic idea of how Bad Moons conduct most of their negotiations. But also because they don't like being upstaged, and need to be the center of attention at all times. Bad Moons tend to try and overthrow whomever is currently leading them, usually by bribing the current warlord's bodyguards, or dying in the attempt because he underbid. That is also an option. Frankly, describing the Bad Moons as merely treacherous would be an insult to Judas and all traitors everywhere, as the Bad Moons are far more than mere traitors of chance or consequence or anything like that. They are habitual traitors. It is literally in their DNA to try and screw over whomever leads them, in large part because whomever is currently leading them has probably personally wronged them at some point in time. See, here's the thing. The Bad Moons aren't enormous assholes just because their biology tells them to be this way. They also, frankly, frequently have good reasons to act rather meanly, brazenly, and unapologetically assholish to everyone around them, as everyone around them who is not a Bad Moon tends to view them as walking ATMs. Now remember, what is Ork cash again? Teeth. That's right. How do you remove teeth from an otherwise perfectly healthy mouth? Yes. Hence the walking ATM thing. They have literal money in their mouths. Money that can be relatively easily removed with a bit of blunt force trauma. As you can probably readily imagine, frequent withdrawals using this method can get the Bad Moons rather irate and somewhat hostile towards their users. Fellow greenskins, I mean, of course. Not that they don't understand, mind you. The Bad Moons value cash, or teeth in this case, more so than any other clan. Oh, they get why they're being punched in the face. They just don't like it. And an aspiring Orc warlord should be careful not to antagonize the Bad Moons too much, as their tremendous wealth can have very beneficial consequences, not just for bringing in enormous quantities of weapons, armor, and customized gear to his warband at large, but also due to their ability to attract eccentric individuals. For example, the Bad Moons sport a far higher percentage of weird boys than almost any other clan, in large part because, well, the Bad Moons do weird shit. The weird boys do weird shit, and both prefer fighting at a distance. The Bad Moons' mechanical interests also tend to get quite a lot of mech boys joining their ranks too, and the more innovative ones alongside them. For example, the enormous teleporter devices used by Gazgul Mag Uruk Thraka to invade Armageddon were built by Bad Moons first, and then sold to Gazgul in return for an alliance. And access to his markets, obviously. And if the power of cash is as powerful in the 41st millennium as it is in the modern world, and the creation of enormous teleportation devices that can transport hundreds of Orc boys at a time down to a planetary surface through the atmosphere accurately, well, it certainly does suggest that, yes, teeth does indeed talk, even in the far future of the 41st millennium. So the next time you see a Bad Moon, consider being nice to him, no matter how much of an enormous asshole he might be, because who knows? He might build you something truly ridiculous, or at the very least, pay for its construction somewhere further down the line. Just be wary if he starts hanging around with your friends and they tell you that he keeps giving them new choppers and little drawings with your back on it and a nice big red X right in between the shoulder blades. And of course, if you have any gold lying around, do keep that a well-guarded secret. Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for listening, and I hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.